Yo, I'm Cam Walker, running back for the Seattle Seahawks.
Tyler Lockett from the Seattle Seahawks.
DK Metcalf.
KJ Wright.
Hey, Burleson, you're watching NorCam.
You're watching NorCam.
What's happening, everybody? This is NorCam coming at you on this Saturday afternoon, kind of near the tail end of this exciting, thrilling free agency period. Boy, what a ride it's been. But there's so much more to be done. But boy, we have already plenty to talk about on this, what is it, the 15th of March. And boy, it's a lot of opinions out there, from extreme love it to extreme hate it, and then a few of you are somewhere in the middle. But where's the truth in all this? Where do these players really rank in terms of the quality of players we lost and players that we've gained? We're going to try to break this down. A little help from an old friend of mine who's going to join the show here. No stranger to the program. Let me introduce you with no further ado. The one and only Noah Boelter. What's up, Noah?
Norb, always a privilege, brother. And, we just talked a few weeks ago, but it feels like decades in NFL time.
It is. It's like dog years, right? It's like a month in the NFL is like 7 years off your life, depending on what end of it that you're feeling like. Of course, for those of you who don't know, Noah and I go back a number of years, but we've collaborated many times on this show, on his show, back in his college days on his radio program. But here we are, and I'm very lucky to have him because he's a busy guy doing morning news reporting in Spokane. So he's taking some time out of his busy schedule to talk some Seahawks football with me. So Noah at Noah Boelter TV is where you can find him. But I appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. I'm excited to jump into this.
Are you kidding me? Privilege is mine. This is the Seahawks fan of the year. Are you do we need to say anything else, let alone in commercials with former NFL player, former Seahawks? You're the guy, man. I'm just excited to catch up.
Hey, it's always a privilege for me. And so, yeah, this is a privilege for you guys because, and truth be told, we did not discuss any of this stuff in advance. We made it a point, even if we started in our pre-production meeting, started to say something about, hey, you know about that trade? Shh. Nope. Save it for the show. We want it to be fresh. So whatever takes he's got, I don't know about him, and he doesn't know about my takes either. So we're all going to discover it together. And you guys can put your takes. I see some of you in the chat already starting to put your grades in there. Feel free to grade the overall moves or each move one at a time, what you think of how these moves hit you. But we're going to break this down and try to shed some light on what this really means, at least from our humble opinions, and see how this goes. But let's back up a little bit, because you and I, obviously, this is our first time talking since we did our last show before free agency began, and boy, has it been a crazy ride. So I know people want to know about the players we got coming in, but let's start from the beginning, I guess, kind of just walk through the timeline before we started picking up players, mostly all the news of all the players we lost. I guess let's just go into chronological order. Let's start with Tyler Lockett. He was the first of the announcements to be made. What was your feeling when the news broke about Tyler Lockett being gone?
Well, it felt inevitable. And with Tyler Lockett specifically, he was a guy who has meant so much to Seattle over the years. He's a fan favorite without question. But he's a guy that so many people around Seattle knew, this might be the time to let him go. He deserves an opportunity to compete somewhere. He deserves to get paid. And we are just not in the stage where, with this current regime, he makes the most sense. We just brought in a new offensive coordinator, and one trend that you'll notice between some of the other guys who we moved off of, we're looking for guys who specifically fit him. And it turns out Tyler Lockett, based on the money that at least he's looking for right now, because there's still the chance he comes back, right? But at least for what he initially wanted, it wasn't an automatic done deal for Seattle.
I'm curious. I've seen that floated around that there's a possibility that, hey, we should bring Tyler back. I guess if you were to make a guess, a gambling guess, you feel like there's three options, right? A, he just retires. B, he plays for another team. Or C, he comes back on a team-friendly, mutually beneficial deal. Which would you say is the most likely scenario at this point?
I think he's going to go somewhere. I don't know that it's going to be right away. It might be after the draft. I think he's too talented to wait till after the draft, but I think there's a chance it could happen after the draft just because people aren't going to build their plans around Tyler Lockett. At least that's what it seems right now. So he's got to find a system where he fits in well, where it makes a lot of sense. Maybe he goes to the Raiders to reconnect with Pete Carroll and with Geno Smith, but they're still figuring out Geno's contract right now. So there's a lot of numbers that are moving around that they're trying to square away. And I think we're in that stage right now where Tyler Lockett, he's just not at the top of anybody's list. And just like we're seeing in the across the NFL with teams waiting to figure out who's going to sign Aaron Rodgers to figure out where Russell Wilson's going to go, there's the domino effect with receivers that just hasn't gotten all the way down to Tyler Lockett, and I think that's kind of what we're waiting on.
Yeah. So are we fools to be holding out hope that Tyler could come back in some happy reunion after we just kicked him to the curb?
Well, no, I don't think we're fools to think that. I think he's going to be very low on our list right now because we just brought in a Cooper Kupp, very sure-handed receiver, possession-oriented. We already have a few small receivers now who are very swift and can catch the ball reliably. So it's just we have the guy who kind of fits his bill. I see Tyler Lockett returning at some point to retire. It could be in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Mm-hmm. But I do not think he returns right now unless it's for a very, very team-friendly deal.
Well, and not to spoil ourselves here a little bit because obviously we're going to get to these players later. But yeah, you mentioned Cooper Kupp and two guys similar, great hands, same age. Once he kind of came back, I was like, maybe that Tyler Lockett reunion is not quite as close as we maybe would have dreamed it to be. But yes, I agree. At some point, he's going to come back. He'll sign that one-day contract and retire as a Seahawk. We just don't know exactly when that will be, depending on when he actually wants to retire, because I think he's still got some game left in him. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. It'll be hard to see him, though, in another uniform. It always is when your favorite guys who've been on your team for so long, whether it's be Bobby Wagner, Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, when they end up Marshawn Lynch coming out of retirement and being on another team, it's always just a weird feeling like, that doesn't look good on him. It should be blue and green, not some black and silver or whatever.
And it doesn't take long. The DK Metcalf edits hurt. Seeing him in number 4 hurts. Black and gold hurts. Looking at some of the stats and seeing the Steelers logo next to his name hurts.
Yeah.
Okay? It's personal for us Seahawks fans right now.
Well, that whole week, we're going to get to him. That whole week, that was crazy. Speaking of DK Metcalf, so not more than a few minutes after Tyler Lockett announced that Tyler Lockett is being released, DK Metcalf spoils the Tyler Lockett love party with a "I want to be traded" announcement, which really kind of sucked. It wasn't in this chronological order, but since we're talking about DK, let's talk about the DK move, the trade that he requested, and I say the Seahawks agreed to and moved him to the Steelers for a second-round pick. A lot of people said they wanted a first for that, but they didn't get it. I wasn't one of them. A second is about where I thought they would land, but let's speak to this trade. What did you think when you heard, A, that DK wanted to be traded, and then B, when it finally all settled and he did get traded? What was your reactions to both?
Well, Norb, I don't know how much you'll recall this from the past couple of years of our conversations, but this is another one of those moves that was kind of inevitable, right? Like, we have a receiver here extremely talented, a specimen, freak of nature, a unicorn, right? Nobody like DK Metcalf. He fell so far in the draft, but we got lucky and ended up with him on our team, and he has just excelled in every single way, except for maybe attitude. But there are so many great things that he brings to the team, a toughness about him. He has really good hands. He's made some really difficult catches, and he can be physical with literally anybody. Like, he's so strong and such an elite frame. But the problem with DK Metcalf isn't entirely his fault. It's the situation. We never put him with the best quarterback. We never put him with a quarterback who had much time to get him the ball down the field. We just never fully utilized him. And then we were in enough frustrating situations offensively for a guy who has attitude problems that's not a great recipe. So we struggle offensively. We don't get him the football. He gets upset. Defensive players poke at him. He gets a penalty. It adds to the problem. And so that ripple effect, we saw it play itself out quite often for a team who struggled so much offensively. Again, not entirely DK's fault, but because we couldn't protect our quarterback, because we did not have schemes that were getting him open all the time. And when we did get him open, oftentimes he would do too much. Oftentimes Geno Smith would do too much because we were trailing so much by that point of the game, because we had so many 3rd and 3 and outs early often. So it made sense to move off from DK because he's so incredibly talented and he deserves to get paid and he deserves to be on a contender. Not saying Seattle's not going to contend, but let's put him somewhere where he can at least get the paycheck he deserves. And I think that's what he needed, was a bit of a change of scenery. He wanted to go somewhere where he could compete, and somewhere he could get paid and be appreciated and have a fresh new scene. And I think it was beneficial for both sides. Now, that being said, it always hurts to lose your most talented player offensively. That's not easy to replace.
And, it can be argued exactly how talented he was. I don't think anyone would argue that he's a freak of nature. He's big, he's fast, he can jump. All that stuff. He's got the mindset of a tiger. I mean, basically, he believes no one can take him down, right? Sometimes to his undoing. But as a football player, there were many times when he would frustrate the hell out of me, because he'd either do some things where he ran questionable routes, or he dropped the football that he should have caught, because if he just circled up and caught it like this instead of body catching it, he would have had a first down. Instead, he drops it. Or there's a high point ball where nobody on this planet should out jump, outreach, out high point DK Metcalf. And yet there were times when he jumped too early. And by the time he came down, it was already practically on the ground and he didn't get the advantage. So there were times when, even when he had those moments of opportunity, they didn't always happen when we wanted them to. But I agree with you that it did feel like when the reality that he was going to be gone finally became true, it did feel like, man, we never maximized his potential. It's like you knew you had this race car, this thoroughbred racing horse, and you couldn't quite tame it, right? You tried to get on this bucking bronco, and you tried to do all the tricks, but we couldn't do it. And it's like, well,
let's with Joe Burrow, right? Like, imagine that connection. Someone who can just put it where he needs it when he needs it.
Yeah. So I don't know. The ironic thing to it was he said at least I've heard that what he wanted was he wanted to play for a contender. He wanted to play for a in a stable quarterback situation. He wanted to play where it was warm. And I think those are the three things. Obviously, getting paid goes without saying. Contender. Not sure about that. Stable quarterback situation. They don't even have really their set quarterback yet. And warmer weather. I'd like to hear what he thinks about Pittsburgh in the dead of winter. But other than that, he's getting paid. And we all kind of saw it as of last year when Justin Jefferson got that bank-breaking contract. I know DK was licking his lips going, ooh, I'm going to get mine next year. That's for sure.
That's really what it was. It was a situation where Seattle was not going to pay him as much as he just got paid in Pittsburgh. And I really think that was the big separator. It felt like it was the big separator with Geno Smith as well. And it's the same reason we cut Tyler Lockett when we did.
Yeah. Financially, it made no sense to do it. A quick side note. If you're the Steelers, if you're a Steeler fan, does this make sense for the Steelers? Because it'd be one thing if, like you said, if let's say he goes to the Bengals and you've got Joe Burrow, a very great, happy offensive situation with a weapon to throw in there with already a bunch of good weapons. But Steelers, it's like, man, it almost feels again like that analogy of putting some really fancy tires on a car that you're still trying to figure out, the engine and the transmission. I don't know. Does he fit in Pittsburgh in a way where if you're a fan, would you be like, yeah, this makes sense, or be like, oh my God, I hope this pays off because it sure looks like a big risk? Because that's what it seems like to me.
Pittsburgh's management and Seattle's management operate similarly in the sense that both teams, are used to winning. They're used to having either a winning season or a playoff appearance. And when they don't get that, which it's few and far in between, and even when they get that and they feel like they're not competing, their ceiling is low. And so what I think Pittsburgh's trying to do is, without rebuilding, restacking. Who does that sound like? That sounds like what Seattle's doing right now, right? Both teams trying to replace key pieces, build enough of a support system around one quarterback so that the quarterback play doesn't matter as much, and they can go with one of the guys who are still available.
Yeah, there are definitely some parallels there, and we'll see. It's going to be fun we play these guys next year on their turf. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch Seattle's defense go against DK Metcalf and whoever the heck's throwing the ball. Heck, Russell Wilson, it's not an impossibility that he could come back if the quarterback situation. Can you imagine that? Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf in black and yellow facing against the Seahawks. And to make it even more intriguing, if this does happen, the Steelers are going to be playing an international game at home, technically in Dublin, Ireland, for the first ever international Ireland game. Could you imagine the schedulers? If this is going to happen, they got to put Seattle in that game, man. That would just be the ultimate ratings blast, don't you think? I would pay money to see that.
We would have to win it. That's the only way I'd appreciate it, man. I need Seattle to win that game. I would not be okay with DK and Russell with their new uniforms, their new teams just destroy it. Oh yeah, that's too hard to think about.
I don't see it, but it would definitely take away the Heinz Field advantage if they had it in a home field that is technically in a now neutral site in Dublin, Ireland. Anyway, continue on our list. I did want to shout out to some of the people watching out here. Daniel, Barry Sports Highlights, Iron Wolf Gaming, Carter is in there. Truslow says they feel like it's a B+. Shelton Mayfield, Hawks fan for life 88. Ethan Demand, Flesh Cannon, A+, 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 A+. We got a glass massively full right there. Shark Boys 67. Kick Up, Tyler Parcher's in here. Says a shout out to Noah out there. Isaac. And keep the chats coming. Deron Everest as well. Keep on going. And Base Tugboat 2675 says Kupp is a B+, signing Sam Darnold is an F-. I didn't even know you could get lower than an F, but an F-. Woo. Okay, well, we're going to talk about that in a second. Anyway, continue down the line. Of course, the elephant in the room, at least it was last week when all this went down. Friday was a shocker to all Seahawks fans. Definitely a shocker to me. The DK, not as shocking, but boy, when it was announced suddenly and out of nowhere that Geno Smith was being traded to the Raiders for a third-round pick, how did that hit you, Noah? Did it hit you like a ton of bricks like it hit me? Because, man, I was not ready for that one.
I was relieved. Look, I love Geno Smith. I appreciate him. I appreciate what he did for Seattle. I appreciate the way that he's been such a professional and overcoming incredible challenges that faced him throughout his career, and his resilience and his attitude and his messaging and his leadership and all those things. And I appreciate all of them. But this also felt inevitable. And as a Seahawks fan for the past 2 years who looked at Geno so optimistically, this might have been his worst year as a Seahawk. In terms of touchdown interception ratio, it was horrible. 21-15 last year. He had so many games where, as an offense, we not only did we struggle, but Geno appeared to be the reason that we lost. How about that Rams game at home? You remember at the end of the year, we missed the playoffs because of a tiebreaker. We don't have a tiebreaker if we beat the Rams in our first game against them at home, where we were in prime position to win. Had it not been for 3 interceptions by Geno Smith, including 2 in the second half, including 1, a pick 6 of over 100 yards, 2 in opponent's territory and scoring position. Geno Smith cost us that game. And that wasn't the only game that I would argue Geno Smith cost us. So the problem with Geno Smith is that the guy who had revived his career is no longer in the building. He's in Las Vegas. So what Mike McDonald did as a rookie head coach of taking all these talented leaders within the program and keeping them around for a year, that made sense, right? He needed to come in, see these guys on a day-to-day basis, figure out how they operate, and then also figure out what he's got going on. Well, now he's figuring out the defense a little bit. We saw it take strides throughout the season. The defense looks good. Now it's time to figure out the offense, which was abysmal for large parts of the year. Seattle was limping offensively all season, even though having some of the best numbers in the NFL and 3 and outs forced defensively. time of possession they struggled with. Not the defense's fault. It's because of the offense. So now to bring in a new offensive coordinator, and we know Mike Macdonald runs the defense. We also know he seems to be pretty hands-off offensively. So this new offense, it needs to be entirely retooled and built around what Clint Kubiak wants. Well, he's a run-first guy. You don't pay $33 million a year to receivers in a run-first system. You also need a quarterback who's familiar with your system, who's available, who's coming off the best season he's ever had, and they got him. So I think moving off Geno Smith, especially considering the money that he was commanding, it was a perfect opportunity considering you're moving offensive coordinators, and especially considering how it worked out. I know we'll get to that. But the move by itself, it was time. And I was okay with it, even though it hurt.
How long had you felt that way? Not at the time of the trade, but prior to that, because obviously there were a lot of people who wanted Geno out of here. Was there a point at which in his time with Seattle as a starter, starting with what he took over with the Reigns, had his comeback player of the year when Russ was traded? Essentially, we saw a 3-year sample size, right? 22 was his first year, went to the playoffs, lost to the Niners, and then 2 no playoff appearances. When did it become clear in your mind that you would be okay to see Geno go?
After his first year as a starter. Even during his first year. That was when we realized, again, even though he had this career revitalization, how low his ceiling was. And how many games it just felt like we were outgunned starting at the quarterback, if not by head coach alone. The transition to the new head coach, the transition to Mike Macdonald and then Ryan Grubb, and seeing him with all these new guys. You also saw him with an offensive coordinator who had just adopted the position. So Mike Macdonald knows that, Seattle wants to keep him for a long time. But if the offense doesn't produce, it's going to make the defense look a lot worse, and that's supposed to be his staple. And so that's another reason why it just made sense to move on, because when you bring in the new offensive coordinator, you tried to force the Geno Smith on him. And what did it cause? Well, time after time, situational football, we were pretty bad. The best moment of the year was at the 49ers when Geno had ran for it, but let's not forget the mistakes he had made before that throughout the game that had put Seattle in a situation where they were trailing with their season on the line before figuring out and going on that win streak for a few games, but then again being humbled. What we saw with Pete Carroll is very similar to what we saw with Geno Smith, a low ceiling. That's why we needed to eventually move out both of them, and that's why independently those moves made a lot of sense.
Going back to, and we're going to move off from the Geno discussion here shortly, but how much, and this was attributed by John Everest, he agreed that the interception against the Rams for a touchdown was awful, but he also says they would do so much better if they could run the ball effectively. So that brings it back, and that was the part that I think me and most of the Geno apologists were saying, well, if Geno had an offensive line that could protect him, if Geno had a running game, obviously go back to if the line can't block either way, they can't run, they can't pass, or he doesn't have time to pass. How much of that played into Geno's appearance as a not very good quarterback, as opposed to the possibility that he was a quarterback who was actually pretty good, just played with a line that made him look bad? How much are you certain that it's really a limit of his ceiling versus the line or lack thereof was the ceiling?
Oh, his situation was unquestionably problematic. The problem is the NFL is a results-oriented business. So a bunch of people chasing bottom lines don't have time to wait and figure out one step at a time scientifically by removing all the other variables what the problem is or who the problem is. They don't have time to do that. So if something goes wrong offensively, you can't remove one piece at a time and test out using the scientific method which person is the problem. Sometimes you got to blow it up. And quarterback is a position where you can have a lot of influence right away. That's why they move on. All
right. Well, and that clearly, too, by the end, even if I do believe, because when asked, the Seahawks brass were all pretty adamant that Geno's our guy. unless they were lying through their teeth. They sure sounded like, and I don't see Mike McDonald's the kind of guy who like makes stuff up and spits out lies all over the place. He seems like a pretty straight shooter. And that negotiation with Geno lasted sounds like a few seconds before he pretty much said, nope, I'm out of here. I want to be traded. So it sounds like not only did Seattle feel like, or maybe Seattle didn't necessarily feel like it was time, Geno felt like it was time, mostly because it seemed like, as with DK, money finally became the object. And it was clear Seattle wasn't going to pay Geno what he felt he was worth. And so we're still waiting to see about that contract. And I guess that's the question is, I'm going to flip it again to the DK question that I threw earlier. If you're a Raiders fan, if you're a Pete Carroll fan, does this move, because I have a friend who's a Raider fan, but lifelong friend, elementary school buddy of mine, and he hated the move. He thought it was bad. He thought it was bad for both sides. So I ask you, if
bad
a Raiders...
You thought it was bad for Seattle?
Well, I guess in terms of a third-round pick for Geno Smith, I mean, and looking ahead to what we're going to talk about, the next quarterback, he just felt like it wasn't exactly a win-win for both teams. So how does this look for the Raiders, for a Raiders fan looking at this? Why should they be optimistic about Geno Smith coming if you just said everything about Geno is the reason why we got rid of him? And the Raiders then basically just going to be finding out themselves a harsh reality, or is there going to be a better situation for him?
Oh, man, I hate to disappoint Raiders fans. I think you got limitations coming your way. I think you got two people who Seattle moved on purpose. I guess the X factor that you got that Seattle doesn't have, and this is a real X factor, is having Tom Brady around, right? Ownership in Seattle, big question mark ever since the passing of Paul Allen. Well, Las Vegas, they just added to their ownership group with Tom Brady, and that's a guy who you can imagine why you might trust him a little bit. He knows what he's doing. I'd be excited because you got a guy in Pete Carroll who loves competition, and he builds a culture and he brings a culture, and Geno Smith is going to perfectly fit that culture. And clearly they've had some level of success together, but I think they both have an extremely low ceiling unless they're able to build an elite roster around Geno Smith. And I just do not see the Raiders as that roster right now. Maybe down the line they got something, but your division is so much better than you. I have a lot of concerns for the Raiders. I think this is a very temporary fix that's not going to last and not going to work very well.
Well, and if they're going to try to build an elite roster, you've already got Geno Smith coming in here. We don't know. That's the funny thing about this thing with Geno is we don't even know what the contract is. We know he rejected Seattle's offer. I think they offered him like 2 years, $40-ish million. That wasn't enough. So clearly we know he's going to be making more than that with the Raiders. We assume $45 million is his baseline per year. It's hard to build an elite roster when you're taking up that much money. And they just paid record money to Max Crosby. So where are you going to get these elite weapons that are missing when they've already devoted that much money to just two players alone? I'm kind of with you. I'm like, I don't know where the solution is unless Pete Carroll and Geno suddenly find some magic with Tom Brady and he just waves a magic wand and Jedi mind trick and turns him into something we've never seen before. But
well, I think
look good.
Here's why it makes sense for the Raiders. You have Pete Carroll. He's trying to establish his culture. You're bringing in a guy who is everything Pete Carroll preaches, which is competition, and he believes in second chances. He believes in guys figuring it out. So to have the most important position on the field be one of those guys, it preaches the message, and it shows that he means what he says, and that's how you establish a culture somewhere new. It's from the top down. So I think that's why it makes sense. Even if there is a quarterback competition in Las Vegas, that'll establish what Pete Carroll's going after in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Raiders fan, they have not been good for a long time. About as long as since Tom Brady broke the hearts of Raiders fans back in 2001 at the Tuck Rule game. That's pretty much where life for the Raiders ended in terms of being a championship caliber team. It's pretty amazing how bad this run has been. But I don't know. It may be a little while longer. Hey, really quick shout out to Raven76 Moore, who says, salute, passing through and dropping a like on the video. Appreciate that, a Ravens fan coming in here. So for all of you who are watching too, or might be passing through as well, please hit that like button and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, check out my guest, Noah Boelter, at his social medias at Noah Boelter TV. All right, let's move. I think we've beat a dead horse here with Geno. So obviously, so far in the moves, as far as exit players, I'm getting from you that this has been pretty much a smile on your face. This has been a kind of had to happen win for you. I assume you're grading all three of these moves into pretty much, besides the emotional side, that these were actually moves in the right direction for Seattle.
We couldn't have paid Geno or DK the kind of money that they wanted, considering their struggles against our division rivals. Like DK specifically struggling mentally against the 49ers and against the Rams at times, getting taken out of games. Let's not forget a few years back, that home playoff game, DK Metcalf doesn't get the ball, complains on the sideline. Next play, screen pass to DK, pick six, touchdown the other way, ends up being the difference in the game. So DK Metcalf, it's the mental things with him. Great player, phenomenal abilities. And again, not entirely his fault. But it's that kind of stuff against division rivals in the playoffs that send a message to management.
All right. Well, I'm with you. It was my reaction to it. It was hard at first. The Lockett one I was expecting. I think I was blissfully, ignorantly hoping the Seahawks could just find a way to make it work, even though I knew the price tag on DK was going to be high. I knew the price tag on Geno was going to be high. I didn't think it'd be that high, but I guess I had that feeling like, oh yeah, I'm going to work it out. We'll all just be, this will be a kumbaya, give hugs and go, oh yeah, I'll play for less. Nope. DK wanted more money. I mean, I think bottom line is they wanted more money. I mean, they wanted the money that they felt they're worth. And I understand that, especially at this stage of their careers. You got to get it while you can. But ultimately, the situation wasn't what it was. And so they moved on, even though I think the Seahawks management were trying to work it out. Here's where we stand. And that transitions us to now the meat and potatoes I want to get into now. The players that we have acquired in this free agency. We're going to go through this in chronological order and kind of break it down and give our grades to what we think about these moves one at a time. And you guys can put your grades as well. Let's do it. You ready to jump into this, Noah?
Yep. Let's go.
All right. Let's start with the first one. Not exactly the one that got a whole lot of people's attentions or anything, but it was a position that we were all kind of looking at. We got Josh Jones. From the Ravens. Josh Jones, just a little specs on him right here. He's 27 years old. He was coming off of his time, a 1-year time with the Ravens, mostly as a reserve blocker, an extra lineman. He gets a 1-year deal worth up to $4.75 million. Noah, tell me your thoughts on Josh Jones.
It was a little bit underwhelming. It's a good backup move considering he lost Stone Forsythe. That's really who he's replacing, Stone Forsythe, George Fant. He's a good swing tackle. I didn't like how much we paid him. He's about 24th in the NFL in terms of left tackles, if you put him in that ranking. In terms of on an annual per year basis, obviously it's a 1-year deal, so you're going to pay him a little bit more because of that. I don't think it does anything crazy to our cap. I think it's a good move, but it's one of the moves that the grade depends on what else you do this offseason, specifically to address offensive line. Because if you bring him in and then you don't bring in 2 guards and or another center or another backup tackle, the rest of the offseason will determine how we grade this. But for now, I'll put it at a C with a cost for pause and a reason to rotate later on.
All right. Well, C for you and a C plus for me. I think you and I are seeing things about the same. Go ahead and in the chat or the comments, put your take and grades on Josh Jones. See if you agree or disagree with us. I'm kind of the same feeling. Of course, I think we are all collectively holding our breath, crossing our fingers for that big free agent signing. This one landed. I was like, an offensive lineman. Oh, okay. It was a little disappointing. It felt like, I don't know, this felt a lot more like, well, we've had a lot of these. We've had a lot of these kind of swing players, these sort of journeyman, pretty good, but never great. And it's like, do we really want more of that? Like, we want quality, not quantity. So obviously you're going to need backup guys, but I felt like this is sort of a rinse, wash, rinse, repeat kind of thing. So I wasn't all that excited. I guess it wasn't a huge amount of money, I thought. So for that matter, I gave it a little bit of a nudge, a C+, because you can never have enough O-linemen, but I want better O-linemen. This just felt like a linear move. So I gave it a C+. Okay.
Yep.
All right, well, moving on from Josh Jones, then things started to get really interesting. So while we were busy, reeling from the Seahawks' departures of three of our faces of our offense, we were going, is this a rebuild? Are we going to lose our, we have no quarterback? Who's going to be throwing And then all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, Sam Darnold to the rescue. Sam Darnold comes to Seattle, and it wasn't complete out of nowhere. There was a lot of talk of him being a logical fit to Seattle. And boy, it has been mixed reviews, though, from many people I talked to. Even in this chat right now, I saw somebody saying, where was it? Someone said something like, somebody's not better. Darnold, from Base Tugboat 2675, Darnold is not better than Geno. Noah, give me your breakdown of what you liked or didn't like about this Sam Darnold deal. Does this get us out of that ceiling you speak of with Geno? Low ceiling. Are we raising the ceiling here? What are we getting here, man? Talk to me.
Well, surely not necessarily. I don't think there's anything that tells us right now Sam Darnold is clearly far and away better than Geno Smith. I think last year he had some better numbers, but I think the situations around them were very, very different. I think Sam Darnold greatly benefited based on his situation, but I think that's also why Seattle went after him, because we have a guy who's worked with him before in San Francisco, who also runs a very similar system with a different variation. Towards the end of the year, we saw Sam Darnold do what he's done throughout his entire NFL career in the biggest moments, which is fall apart. And it was really hard to watch as someone rooting against the Rams in that playoff game. And then also as someone who just respected their journey throughout the season, and to see them get demolished the way they did to a very injured Lions team at the end of the year, it really spoke to how much Sam Darnold can struggle in those key situations. But I think that's why he fits even a little bit better in Seattle potentially than Minnesota, if we're not talking about personnel right now, because we still have a lot of question marks in Seattle in terms of what his supporting cast will be. But in terms of just play calling, McConnell's variation of the McVay, Kubiak, West Coast tree is a little bit pass heavy, whereas Clint Kubiak's iteration is a little bit more run heavy. So I think that'll be something that supports Sam Darnold a little bit more schematically than the support that he had in Minnesota, just because in Seattle we're hungry to run the football, especially after how much we struggled last year. That's part of the reason why we bring in a Clint Kubiak. So we're bringing in a quarterback who is familiar with Clint Kubiak, who had his most impactful season as a backup, season or two as a backup in San Francisco, right? You heard him in that press conference talking about how the time he spent behind Brock Purdy, understanding he's the point guard of the team who just has to get the ball to the weapons. Well, clearly they're still building those weapons around Sam Darnold right now, but it was that mentality change. Well, who was he working with when he had that mentality change? It's the same guy he's working with right now. And what has he done in between then? Well, he just had the best season he's ever had as a starting quarterback. So if there was ever a time to pay him, it would be right now. He's playing as good as he's ever played. Remember, top 3 draft pick. He was right up there with Baker Mayfield at the top of that draft. And now he has at least a certain swag and a certain confidence throughout the regular season that could help potentially Seattle in the regular season. Remember, Seattle lost based on a tiebreaker. But if we could just dominate in the regular season like the Vikings did, we would have walked away with the NFC West. So I think there are serious question marks about what Sam Darnold's going to do when the ball in his hands and he's got to go get Seattle to win. I think that's a concern. In the biggest moments come playoff time. And to that end, yeah, there are serious questions if Sam Darnold is even in the slightest bit of an upgrade over Geno Smith. Does he take a sack instead of throwing a 100-yard pick six? Maybe. Sam Darnold says he's maturing and learning. That's what we'd hope that he says. I think this is a way for Seattle to establish a new offensive coordinator, go out and draft a quarterback in this year's draft, give them time to learn behind someone while also exploring what Sam Darnold's ceiling is in this system with this surrounding cast, with a defense that should be elite this year in Seattle, right? All Seattle needs is to not wet the bed as much as they did last year. They need to make sure that they can control the ball offensively, that they can run the football. This is an offensive coordinator who dealt with so many injuries last year. And he just wants to know that he has somebody at the helm who can do what he wants him to do. On the 710 interview with Sam Darnold, he mentioned how much of the verbiage he still knew. Most of the playbook. Sounds like he already knows most of the playbook. And he says he's going to restart from zero and pretend he knows nothing, but that stuff counts for a quarterback, especially for an offense who needs to establish an identity and last year struggled to. They had their most success early on in the year when they were passing the football, but then they were like, oh, wait, crap, we're Seattle. We got to run it. And then they tried and they sucked. So then they struggled with everything because then they realized they couldn't run it, and so the passing became one-dimensional. And then they struggled with that. So it was just a ripple effect of bad events and horrible mistakes. So this is a move to establish an identity for a cheaper price while also building a better surrounding cast. The whole thing with Geno Smith was Seattle thought they could win with Geno, similar to how they won with Russ. Give him the best supporting cast possible, have him manage the game. They never could build on that supporting cast, and with the money he wants now, they couldn't do that. So now they not only save money by bringing in Sam Darnold, they get a guy who's younger with hopefully a higher ceiling, at least enough time that Sam can buy Seattle for Seattle to draft another quarterback and develop and see who they got with. So I think that's the game plan here. I think, yeah, to an extent it's a lateral move, but you're saving money on a lateral move on a guy who will really work with this offensive coordinator potentially.
So what grade do you give him?
On this move, B+, because I believe in it. I believe in it. I think this is a good move for Seattle. I think Sam Darnold is going to be who we know him to be. I think he's going to struggle in those biggest moments, but Geno Smith was going to do that anyways, so let's at least save money and go with somebody who fits our offensive coordinator.
All right. Well, I updated the grade right there, and I also put mine as well. So a bit more optimistic than yours. B+ for Noah. I'm giving it an A-. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I had to go 180 from the, oh my God, they're getting rid of Geno Smith. He's fine. Why did they do that? To the, you know what? I didn't like it at first, but the more I looked at it, the better looking this deal became. I think you brought up a couple of good points, because I won't reiterate everything you said because you articulately said it so well. But you mentioned the comparison to Baker Mayfield. We would love to have a Baker Mayfield type resurgence here as he has had in his career, because we saw the struggles he had going through Cleveland and almost looking like he was going to be done. And he has this great season with the Rams, and then he ends up in Tampa Bay. And now look at him. He's like he's got the keys to the city over there. It's been a perfect match. And I'd like to see that maybe that breakout year where he had playing for the Rams is sort of like how he was with the Vikings, setting up a comeback situation where, with all the pieces kind of lining up with a familiar coordinator, building with a new coach who's now in his second year and has had a say in all the personnel, including quarterback, that everything will kind of just gel together and build on what we have seen him do from a year ago. I agree with you. There's no obvious way to say that he's better than Geno, because I think you take the two out of each situation and just have a throwing contest and stuff, you'd probably see them pretty close if they were to be graded on an absolute bubble in a vacuum. But we know that, like you said earlier, there is no absolute way you can just take one piece out and go, let's diagnose this scientifically. So you have to take it for what it is. What we have seen is that we have seen the ceiling with Sam Darnold when all things are good. And that ceiling is 14-3 and a playoff berth. Yeah, he kind of sucked in the playoffs, but that's that anomaly of the year. But we've seen the ceiling. He's a 14-3 capable player if the pieces around him and the coaching around him are right. That's the big if. We hope that that's going to be the case with Clint Kubiak, the new mindset, the new outside zone scheme, the players that they're going to draft, that everything is kind of lockstep towards that direction. Will we be 14-3? It's kind of a big stretch. But if we can at least head towards that direction so we can move from what we were 10-7 last year and inch towards that way, 11-6, 12-5, I mean, that is going to get you in the playoffs. We should have been in the playoffs this year. But this will get them securely in the playoffs, not having to hang on to a tiebreaker. So I like this move. The more I looked at it, and really when it came down to it, it was the money. Because if Geno was simply coming in saying, I want $45 million 3 years in his mind, and if nothing close to that came out of Seattle and that was what I was going to do, well, then we were done. There was no discussion. And if they are, like you said, equal, what's not equal anymore is Geno Smith is that much older. How many years older? That's the age difference between two. 27 for Sam and Geno's 34. 35. It's like it's like a 7-year difference, right? So if their skill level's equal, there's a 7-year youth difference and a $12 million difference, $33 million versus potentially 45. That's a big difference, and I'll take that to weigh it to this direction towards Sam Darnold myself, and that's why I give it an A-. So
exactly, you see a guy like Sam Darnold grow situation after situation, and you heard John Schneider speaking about it earlier this week, and you get excited for the trajectory. You see where he's headed, you see the improvement, and you just wonder if you have a situation that truly is built around him, like this one is. Minnesota, remember, was built around J.J. McCarthy, not Sam Darnold. Mm-hmm. So now Sam Darnold gets to Seattle, introduced as the starter. This is going to be different. So let's see what Seattle can do to build around Sam Darnold and to set him up for success with a guy who picked him out of the group.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's some comments I want to address here. But first of all, I got to shout out to Lena Dahl, who says, hi, soon-to-be Congressman Norb Cam. I say between an A and a B for me in terms of the draft, or I should say the free agent moves. Your dad's first initial, we Sagittarius stick together, connections. Yeah, thank you very much. And for those of you who didn't see it, go check out my previous YouTube video when I went down to the state capitol yesterday and went to the Senate hearing to testify on behalf of the 12s to support the House bill to propose making it official in the state of Washington that December 12th be officially called the Day of the 12s. So I went down there, did my due diligence, my support, and represented. So you can see my speech that I gave in front of the Senate committee on YouTube. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I did it. Didn't have to do it. I could have done it remotely, but I thought, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go down and do it right. Wear my gear and show up personally. So it was a lot of fun to do. All right.
Well articulated, brother. I watched it. Well articulated.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun. It's checked off my bucket list. You have a list of things you want to do. Go skydiving, be fan of the year, be on ESPN, and now I can say I testified at a Senate hearing. All those things have great connection to each other. Anyway, so let me see the interesting comments about this move. Long live the Kings gives it a C. Memphis Showboats fan A-. Memphis Showboats fan says again, who did Darnold choke to this year? The Commanders?
It was not the Commanders.
It was not the Commanders. It was
the Rams and the Lions.
Yeah. Said no Justin Jefferson. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be different. See, Pimpin 100, 60% completion rate for Darnold, 70% for Geno. Again, you have to eventually look at the big picture. Right.
If you want to play the stat game, I
know you brought up the most important one, right? Touchdowns.
Geno Smith 21-15, Sam Darnold 35-12. How about and this is a stat I had to collect a little bit. So total touchdowns versus total turnover opportunities. Okay, so this is passing and rush touchdowns for both quarterbacks versus interceptions thrown and fumbles lost, whether they were recovered by their own team or not. So Sam Darnold last year, 36 total touchdowns, 35 passing, 1 rushing, 12 interceptions with 8 fumbles for 20. So 36 and 20 with Sam Darnold's. It's pretty good. Not great, but it's pretty good. Total touchdowns versus total turnover opportunities for Geno, 23 to 24. Negative, because he had 9 fumbles with 15 interceptions versus only 2 rushing touchdowns and 21 passing. Statistically, Sam Darnold was better.
Yeah, you can always pull one stat out than the other, but that's a big one right there because those are game-changing plays right there, and we have so many burned-in memories of some of those interceptions and fumbles. And really, Geno got lucky. If we're being real here, there were a lot of interceptions that did not show up on the board because the defender just dropped it. I was like, that should have been pick. That should have been a pick 6 right there. I remember a few that were like, oh my God, we just dodged a bullet. So, it could have been worse. So, not to say it's going to guarantee future earnings potential, I'm saying, but, the track record is definitely there in one of the biggest categories that is not in favor of Geno. So again, that's why this grade looks more and more appealing the way we look at it. All right. So anything else we want to talk about Sam Darnold? I think we talked it pretty well. The time will tell when it comes down to it. We got the draft to do. We got the line to see how that comes together. But all in all, it will be fun to look at this. Again, it'll be one of those things where you and I can look at this and do a show in like late November, early December, and look back and look at this show and go, remember all that stuff we said? We'll be able to look at Geno with the Raiders. We'll look at DK with the Steelers. We'll be looking at Sam Darnold here and just see how all these pieces, which all happened at the same time, how they're all helping their respective teams. It's going to be fun to look back, and hopefully we'll be like, look how smart we were. Look how we figured this thing out. We knew what was coming way back in March. Because that's what we're hoping for anyway. Well,
and Norb, this, don't take this the wrong way as a Seahawks fan. Look, DK obviously is going to provide so many great things for Pittsburgh. He's such a great player. He seems like a great guy. But you combine him and George Pickens in the same receiver room, and what's the plus minus on unnecessary roughness plus taunting penalties on those two? Holding, just a blindside block, hits from the back. There's a pile, and they're hitting someone from behind, away from the play. They're grabbing face. But how many of those are going to happen this year? They're going to need a guy at quarterback to keep them in the right headspace. They're
going to need a babysitter to deal with all the tantrums that are going to be happening from both the guys if they are not happy with the amount of touches they're getting. They got to keep 2 very diva-esque receivers happy. That's hard enough with 1. We just had 1. They got 2. So good luck, Pittsburgh. Good luck, Mike Tomlin. All right, let's move on. Let's go to the next in the free agent signings. This one, again, interesting reactions. We go to Marquez, as we were discussing. It's Marquez. I've been saying Marquez, but Marquez Valdes-Scantling. We just say MVS. We can't mess that up. MVS to the Seahawks. Let's get a little deal here. He's 30 years old, 1 year, $5.5 million, 6'4", 206 pounds. He was very fast in the 40 in 2018, 4.37 40-yard dash. And 17 in his last year, 17 receptions. He had split years. He was with the Bills for a little bit, and then he went to the Saints. And 17 receptions, 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, 22.6 yards per reception. And he played 8 games with Kubiak as well. So what was your reaction picking up Marquez Valdes-Scantling? So
let's keep in mind here, of those 8 games he played with Kubiak, 5 of those he had Derek Carr. 3 of those, his primary thrower was Spencer Rattler. Okay, so now if you want to take a statistical analysis of what if we compare the stats of DK Metcalf versus MVS last year, right?
Okay.
So DK played 15 games, MVS played 14. Receptions, DK blew him out of the water, 66 to 19. Okay. Yards, DK blew him out of the water, 992 to 411. But he's starting to catch up a little bit. Right? Because he averaged more yards per catch, 21 to 15. That's going to happen with the amount of volume that DK got versus MVS. You look at touchdowns, 5 reception touchdowns for DK Metcalf versus 4 for MVS. He had that game where he popped off early on with Derek Carr. It was against the Falcons. We had 2 touchdowns, 109 yards. It was the second game on the team. That's the kind of role that he can have in this Clint Kubiak offense. Now you look at where Sam Darnold got paid, and it's right in there. I think it's like the very next highest paid after Derek Carr. So this is a guy who understands the system, who 6'4", 206, big frame, can stretch the field, can play downfield, which is going to be really, really important considering our two best receivers both excel in the slot, and we're in an offense now that's not going to use too much of a slot receiver, okay? Because this is an offense that runs 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, or 2 running backs, and that's the way that they're going to line it up quite often. So I think MVS fits the system. He's explosive down the field. They got him for a good price, 42nd is his rank amongst wide receivers on an annual basis, and it's only a 1-year deal. So again, just like Sam Darnold, you're bringing in a guy who understands the system and can fill a unique role. I think after this year, this could very easily be a guy who we re-sign on a 3-year deal based on how he fits with the team. So I think he fills a role, and you want to talk about grades, let me scroll up to where I put that. I put, based on the value with where we got him, with what he provided for his team last year, and let's not forget the role he's played being with Aaron Rodgers when he won MVP, being with Pat Mahomes when he won MVP, being with Josh Allen when he won MVP. This guy has seen some very successful quarterback play, and if only we can just wish for a little of that fairy powder dust to brush off on Mr. Darnold in the quarterback room. This is a big addition for Seattle, again, because it's a guy who understands the system, who plays a role different from anybody else who Seattle has right now, and it's a guy who's been in successful situations and knows how to win. So, A for me, MVS to Seattle.
Okay, a big A, the highest grade so far. A for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS. As you see my grade right here, I'm giving it a B. I'm not rating quite as highly, and I'll say why. But first, before I do that, I want to shout out Alina Dahl, fabulous moderator, with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Said, I'm just happy that Coop came back home. Nothing like playing in front of family and friends. Let's go. By the way, not going to miss DK's tantrums. Think he saw the writing on the wall with the coach, ? So, well, definitely I agree with you on all those points right there. We will get to Coop in just a minute. But let's get back to MVS. So I agree with you. The positives is his experience. He's been on multiple teams. We've seen the success that he's had. He's got the experience playing with Kubiak, and under which he flourished. Like you said, the 4 touchdowns stands out in terms of a small sample set compared to the surprisingly small number of touchdowns that DK unfortunately did not have as many as we thought he would last year, and the yards per catch being as well large as well. I'd say my biggest concern here is, I guess, when I think of this move, it's meant to sort of be a replacement to DK. Surely you can't replace a guy. You can't replace Superman with, a dude who's just not quite built like him. 6'4", 200. What's DK, like 6'4", 240? I mean, he's the man of steel, right? This is 6'4", 206. So you're getting a slender version of that, right? But again, I mentioned he is fast, and I think his ability to take the top off. We needed that, with losing DK and the way that JSN benefited. A lot of it was because DK stretched the field and leaving all those opportunities for JSN and Tyler Lockett. So I like that aspect of it. I guess my biggest concern here is just he's had a little bit of a reputation of not being a great catcher of the football. Now, I would love to see some stats to compare, like catch probability between DK and MVS if they had such a thing. Like catch balls that should have been caught, how many were dropped? I would love to see that. I don't know if there's a way that, I'm sure they keep that kind of research, but I'm hoping that MVS is higher than DK in that category, but he may not be because that seems to be the thing that kind of his reputation that sort of bogs him down a little bit is just sometimes he's got the drops when it comes to catching the ball. And one of my biggest issues with DK was the drops. And so I would hate to see one fast guy replacing another fast guy who both drop the ball a lot. So if he can hold on to the ball, I would raise this up higher, but that's why I'm keeping it at a B, because I think the value is good, what he does to the dynamic of it and the way he fits into the system. I just don't go into A category because what's the main function of a receiver? It's got to catch the football. And if they have issues with holding on to the football, it's hard to me to rank this super high. So that's why I kept it to a B in this scenario. So
I mean, it's the value, man. 42nd highest paid. It's not like you're paying him yeah. That's the beauty of this move.
I mean, he's only a little bit higher than Josh Jones, who's right now a part-time backup swing player on your offensive line. So the fact that they're paying him less than $1 million more per year, I agree with you on the value. So that part of me gets excited. So let's see the comments from the rest. Base Tugboat 2675 says MVS is a D+. Man, who peed in your Cheerios today, man? Cosmet 32 with a C+ on this one. Grand Slam Dunk. I don't understand how people dislike this MVS move. We got this dude for cheap and paired him up with a coach who made him pretty successful last year. You guys are in the same mind space right there. SL Hazard says B+. Okay. Grand Slam Dunk says B+. True So says initially a C-, but after watching some of his videos within the Kubiak offense and seeing his stats during that game, he seems to be a pretty good fit. B grade for me now. So there you go. Kind of all over the place. Everything from a D+ up to a B+. So somewhere in the middle, I think I fit right there in that middle break. But Noah Boelter going all in on with the A grade for MVS. So we'll see how that pans out. Again, my special guest today is Noah Boelter, morning reporter in Spokane, kind of to take some time out to break down these moves that are happening this past week during free agency. So let's move to the next one. They just get more and more interesting, don't they? From MVS, we go to yet another controversial signing. This time we go to Demarcus Lawrence from the Cowboys. What are we getting in Demarcus Lawrence? Well, I'll tell you what we do know about him. He's been with the Cowboys all his career. 32 years old now. He's going to be 33 in about a month, so just call him 33. His deal is 3 years, $32.5 million, but 18 guaranteed. He's 6'3", 265 pounds, and he missed a bunch of games last year due to a foot injury. I think he only played 4 games. I believe it was 4 games last year. Yep. Had 3 sacks in those 4 games. All right. Demarcus Lawrence, Noah, break this down for me.
Well, we needed an edge player. We needed a guy who can get to the quarterback, and obviously he didn't play much of last season due to an injury, but clearly when he was there, he did make an impact, and that is on a defense for the Cowboys who struggled last year and hasn't been the same for years, slowly falling off year after year as Jerry Jones refuses to make a big splash in free agency. I think the best part about the Demarcus Lawrence move, not just the money that we got him, $4K, $10.8 million per year, 29th in the NFL in terms of edge rusher pay between actually 2 commanders, Dorrance Armstrong Jr. and Frankie Louvu. First of all, it's a deal. Second of all, it's exactly what we needed in Seattle. Third of all, did you hear the shot he took at the Cowboys on the way out? Like barely.
I was going to bring that up later.
In Lake Washington, and he's already just throwing shade at Dallas. That was the best part for me, because not only is he a leader who's coming into the locker room, who's had an impact in years past, who still has something to offer, who is fighting to prove that he still got it. He's coming with the same defensive coordinator who he worked with for years in Dallas, also with a head coach who is a genius at revitalizing guys' careers late in their career, Jadeveon Clowney in Baltimore. Let's not forget what Mike McDonald did with that gentleman. Mm-hmm. Well, the way that he took a shot at Dallas, and I wasn't going to win over there, that also sent a message to Seahawks fans that this team is trying to win right now, and that he's not coming over here to not compete. And he's coming over here not just to prove what he's got, but because he thinks Seattle has a chance. And I think that's important, at least a better chance than Dallas. And obviously, for financial reasons, it wasn't working out in Dallas, but also the opportunity to excel. Where is he going to excel like he could in Seattle? Right? This defense made guys look really, really good last year with the way that they were getting to the quarterback and getting so much pressure. There are so many guys you got to worry about on this defensive front, and schematically with the way that we're always chasing edges. Okay? Well, we got one. We just brought one in. We got him for a good deal, and you can't have enough pass rushers. This is a guy you add to a rotation. He can make a difference. He can win you a game late in the year. And that's why I love this addition. I give it an A.
Ooh, okay. Going with another A. Man, he's just throwing roses at this free agency season so far for the Seahawks. All right, so for me, I mean, I'm almost there, but I had to temper my expectations. I don't know, maybe it's just a cautious guy in me, but I went with a B+. I still liked it. Don't get me wrong. B+ is a... well, you know, I mean, except when our kids come home with that grade, we usually say, well, what did you do? B+? Why did you get an A- or an A? What happened? B+ is still a pretty good score there. I agree. It's something we needed. You can never have enough pass rushers. I'd say again, the upside, the fact that this is a defensive-minded head coach. We've seen what he's done, like you said, in Baltimore. Would love to see him do the same thing. And we like where this defense has gone from where it started last year and to where it ended up the season. I'd love to think that this is just a launching point to get even better. Demarcus Lawrence, of course, the biggest concern is, okay, the injury part of it. How significant is that injury going to affect his career moving forward? We won't know because this is the first time he didn't play this many games, a significant amount of games missed. So I think that's for me what knocked down to a B category was just the unknown, the uncertainty of the injury side. Because we have seen guys who have come over here in hopes that they would reclaim their previous performing ability and seen it not work out. Jamal Adams. So we know what injury-plagued guys can look like, but hopefully this was just an anomaly and that he can come back. And maybe this injury was sort of a blessing in disguise because he basically got to take a year off, played 4 games and saved 13 games of wear and tear and got to rest up till this year. So in some ways, it's like he almost didn't have to play a whole season that he would have if he had actually played out the whole deal in a season that would have been fruitless anyway, since they didn't make the playoffs. So I'm much like all these moves, but him in particular, I'm cautiously optimistic that if he can recapture any of what he did before, would be amazing. And I think one thing that you didn't mention is it's so often we look at edge rushers and we look at the sack productivity, and the fact that he got 3 sacks in 4 games is still pretty impressive. But he's far from removed from the double-digit sack years when he got those in the late teens. I think is when he got his, I can't remember if it was 12 or 14 sacks or something in that area. Hasn't been that productive since. But his run stuffing ability is very good. That might be more of the staple of what makes him a really great player. And as we've known too well over the last few years, the inability to stop the run has been something that has driven us crazy. We couldn't run the ball and we couldn't stop the run. I don't know how many times I've said that so many times in losses that we'd had that would pile up over the last few years. It'd be nice to be able to say we ran the football and we stuffed the run. And this is the kind of thing that he brings to that table. So if you can throw a sack or 2 in there, every few games, well, that would just be icing on the cake. So for me, just the injury concern is the biggest question mark. But outside of that, I love that Twitter battle that he got into, man. I thought that was awesome. That made you just 10 times more excited about the signing, because sometimes you get players who just end up here because the teams picked them. They had no choice. But it's cool to hear a player actually show his hand and not only, say how much he liked being here, like essentially say, I'm excited. I'm going to be playing for a team that's going somewhere or has the potential to go somewhere, and throwing shade on his old team. Because, everybody loves to just, I'd love to see Dallas take a hit on the chin every once in a while and just stick to Jerry Jones. So I just love that. I mean, it'll be for some great fuel the next time we play them, whatever that'll be. That won't be this year unless we go to the playoffs and meet them down there. But I just loved it. The passion, and it's cool that, it's not the politically correct thing to say. It's probably not even the wisest thing to say, but I loved it anyway. It's fun when they let a little bit of their true feelings out and they say what they really mean, because we barely hear that very often. So I loved it. I thought it was great. And yeah, it made me just think, okay, I'm rooting for you that much more, man. Sounds like you want to be here, and I want players who want to be here. Like Ernest Jones. We didn't talk about him because he was kind of already on the team. But man, talk about having to take care of priority one with Ernest Jones. I mean, that is a dude who wants to be here. He didn't get the highest amount of money. He could have been paid more, I think, if he really wanted to demand it. He was a great addition to the Seahawks defense, just transformed that linebacking department. And I'm so glad they got that deal done. But I want more guys like that. The guys who just sound like they just want to be here, and that it's like they believe in what they're building here. So I'm excited most of all about that. So I think you hit that as well. So there we go. An A for Noah and a B+ for me. Let's see, what does everybody else say in the chat? We've got Tay let's see, no, that's Skywalker says, I'm giving it an A. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I can't get the stupid smile off my face. Base Tugboat 2675. I don't like the drama between him and Dallas. Base Tugboat, man, what's wrong? You get on the wrong side of the bed or something? Everything that's coming out of your mouth today is just like kind of negative, man. You need a little hug or something. Somebody give him a hug over there. SL Hazard, Demarcus, I'll give virtual hug right here. Virtual hug. Yeah. SL Hazard, Demarcus Lawrence is a beast. John wouldn't sign him if he wasn't healthy. Base Tugboat said it created unnecessary drama with the media. Well, we kind of like that, right? We have a man who's got a pulse.
No one talk about us.
Yeah, exactly. That story just took off. And Hog blogger Brian Neuheiser was the one who was doing the interview on that, and that just good for him, man, because now everybody's linking that story. He's just getting some blow up right now. SL Hazard, Micah planting the seeds to come to Seattle next year. I don't know if Micah Parsons is going anywhere anytime soon, but I think he was part of that Twitter battle too. Let's see, anybody else say anything else here? I think those are the grades. Oh, Eric Gibson gives it an A-. So overall, I think pretty good overall. Okay, that leads to... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's a shift of focus. You mentioned the Ernest Jones. You mentioned Demarcus Lawrence's ability to stop the run. Defensively, we're stopping the run. Offensively, we're fixing the run, right? That's the idea this offseason by the offensive coordinator addition and by choosing him above the rest of the pack. So this is a time of possession offseason for Seattle, hoping to get on the right end of it. And that's the theme that we're seeing with some of the guys we're talking about.
Yeah, that's absolutely. That's why it's been a much more happier week than last week when it was just, where are we going? What's rebuild? Okay, so for the final free agent pickup, the one that happened just yesterday, put a big smile on my face, not going to lie. We go to Cooper Kupp, the longtime Los Angeles Ram. Coop is coming back home to Washington State, hometown native of Yakima, Washington. I love how people say Yakima when we're not from here. Hey, from
like,
Yakima,
how do you know they're
Washington.
not? Yep.
Yeah. Eastern Washington grad, legendary player over there. And then, of course, he becomes a Super Bowl winner at the Rams, Offensive Player of the Year as well. So I think it was Super Bowl MVP, right? I mean, just one of the best to ever do it. And now he's wearing the blue and green in Seattle. 31 years old. Gets a 3-year deal worth $45 million. We don't know the guarantees. It hasn't really been published yet, so we don't know exactly how much of that is how it's going to be spread around or what that totally means. But if you want to just go based on years per total, it's going to be about 15 a year. 6'2", 207 pounds. All right. We know the legend, but we do know he's been plagued with injuries too. So that being said, what version of Cooper Kupp are we getting coming back to Seattle in 2025? What you got, man?
Oh, man, I'm just so excited for Cooper Kupp. Oh, man, everybody is so excited about Cooper Kupp. Not only is it a homecoming for a guy at Eastern Washington University, I live about 20 minutes away from Eastern right now. I'm over there all the time. My roommate goes to Eastern, and he's heard the legends of Cooper Kupp in the hallways. Like, this is a guy who people at WSU – I graduated from Washington State University, and year after year, I heard people talking about how Eastern's claim to fame is Cooper Kupp. And it's just, he's such a huge name in Spokane. He means so much to this community over here. It's awesome. Just the homecoming side of it. Like we can appreciate that for him, for a guy who had to really earn his way to the NFL, who then earned his way to be the best receiver in the NFL for a year, winning the Triple Crown and Super Bowl MVP. Like you hate it for the Rams, you love it for Cooper Kupp. And for him to come home, that's beautiful. Now, let's not pretend that we're getting a scrub here. Yes, he's had some injury problems. Yes, he's 31. Receivers can play well past 31. Let's remember last year, 12 games, 100 targets, 67 catches, 710 yards, 6 touchdowns. Same as DK Metcalf. Okay, he's had an impact. Now, what was his biggest strength? Why was he so successful on the Rams? What do the Rams do a lot of offensively? Well, they do a heck of a lot of play action. And what is Seattle going to try and do so much this year is a ton of play action. That's how they're going to get Sam Darnold involved. It's going to be a lot of underneath routes. It's going to be a lot of vertical to the corner. Vertical to the sideline. Vertical, break inside. And that's what Cooper Kupp does. So I think this is going to be a phenomenal scheme for Cooper Kupp. I think he's going to play a huge role. And who was it? Was it Diamador Lenore of the 49ers who went on Instagram Live after trading DK? And did you see that?
I didn't see that one, huh?
He goes live on Instagram. He's like, what? How are we even going to have fun now? Y'all going to trade DK? Man, ain't no one scared of First of all, he called out JSN dramatically.
Ooh, okay.
Essentially saying JSN's a waste of his time. He's boring. But also saying, how we going to have, man, y'all going to trade DK? How I'm going to have fun when I play y'all? You're going to have fun with Cooper Kupp now. What? You're going to have fun with Cooper Kupp now.
And he knows you guys.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is the fact that he is going to fit right into the system, just like Sam Darnold does. He's going to be Sam Darnold's safety net. And you talk about adding an MVS, and the beauty of that is that MVS is the down-the-field threat like a Jordan Addison. Remember, Sam Darnold last year had a 97-yard pass. Remember, last year, Sam Darnold had several plays deep down the field. Well, now we have that long stretch down the field. Cooper Kupp can play all over the field. Jackson Smith and Jigba can play outside as well. All these guys can be all over, and they're all going to be comfortable in a system, especially Cooper Kupp, very similar to what he's been running in LA. It's an A.
So the great. Okay. I didn't think I had to ask you, but I want to make sure it was official. Okay. So I think for the first time, you and I are almost identically on the same page. I gave it A minus. So we're almost on the same page. Noah gives Cooper Kupp an A minus for me. I too was excited about it. I think a lot of us were anticipating this move could realistically happen because we knew the Rams were going to release him. They publicly stated so that if they don't work out a deal, a trade or something, then he'll be released after the first day of free agency, which he did. And then we were already linked. I think one of 3 or 4 teams that were actively talking to Cooper Kupp, and obviously with the connection to his hometown of Yakima, Washington, and the Eastern Washington connection, and having family here. I think it's funny.
People gonna show up here and think you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, I know what it is. It's Yakima. I know. Actually, I have a personal connection too, which is kind of cool because my business partner, Mike Lorraine, 80s Broncos fan in my Rivals videos, his best friend growing up was Kyle Kupp, and I believe Kyle is his uncle. So he's got a friend, personal connection to it, which just adds to the feel good story that this is. But so many years we've seen him just terrorize us with his abilities, with his route running, with his catching, with the run after the catch, and it's great to think, man, he's gonna be playing for us now. I mean, just the possibility of what that adds. But again, he's kind of like a Lockett, but with extra gizmos to him because they both have great hands. He's a great route runner. I think he's stronger than Tyler Lockett after the catch. We know that Tyler Lockett's kind of been taking catch the ball and just drop to the ground and don't take a hit. Cooper Kupp, though, man, that guy balls out. He'll keep fighting through to get that extra yard. So I kind of like the grittiness of that. So it's like you're getting basically kind of the Tyler Lockett technician with a little extra, the little beard and grizzly man mixed in with it. So that whole combination is just awesome. Then, of course, the experience. And then, of course, like you said, the way he blends in with the system. There's not much to not like about here other than, again, like the Demarcus Lawrence one is the injury issue. How much will that affect him moving forward in this stage of his career, being that he's 31, know what I said, 31 years old? So, the last time he played a full 17-game season was that year that he had the outlandish numbers of 145 receptions and almost 2,000 yards. I believe that was when they won the Super Bowl as well, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that's the last time he played an entire season healthy. After that, he played 9 games in 22, 12 games in 23, and 12 games in 24. So that part of it is concerning.
He peaked.
And what's that?
He peaked.
He peaked. Yeah.
We all peaked.
But if his peak is 2,000 and his okay on a limited basis, he's still getting 800 yards, 737 yards, 710 yards. He's still pretty good for a guy who doesn't even play the entire season. I mean, some guys don't get those numbers and they play the entire season and then some. So he's still very productive, and speed is not even his game. So the fact that it's not about speed and like he loses speed and he's done, he can still do what he does, and there's no replacement for beautiful soft hands, right? So he can catch anything that's thrown his way. So I'm excited about it. That's why I give it an A-. The minus just because the injury question mark. But let's see what you guys say. Gridflow gives it a C. I'd like you to qualify that statement, but he says C. Base Tugboat 2675. Hey, the hug worked. Cooper Kupp is an A signing. We got Base Tugboat to finally be a little positive today. I love it. Gridflow. Ooh, Gridflow got a little bit of the taste of his Cheerios that he peed in earlier from Base Tugboat 2675. Overpaid for a 32-year-old wide receiver who was on the verge of being washed, he says. Washed. 710 yards on 67 receptions in 12 games is washed? Come on.
Wait. Let's not forget, how many touchdowns did DK have last year?
Was it
5?
How many did
Kupp have 6?
6.
Is
Keep that
DK
number.
washed? Is DK washed? How many games did DK play versus Cooper Kupp? Last year, Coop played 12, DK 15.
Yep.
Washed.
SL Hazard says B, an A if he stays healthy. Skywalker, Coop, right? Welcome home. Being from Spokane, it gave me the chills. I finally got my wish, and probably his. Ryan Sanders 07, D. Grade. Oh wait, he said we hired another terrible quarterback. Grade D. Oh, he's going back to the Sam Darnold signing. Skywalker, winning 13 games is bad. Next. Oh, I think he's talking about. I think we must be having a debate about Darnold. Rouser with a super chat. Appreciate that. Says Darnold can't play past week 16. Good money to old guys who are past their prime. We stuck in mediocrity yet again. Don't like the offseason. Prove me wrong.
Well, what you can't do is tell your fans that you're going to tank. You just can't do that. That doesn't sell seats, and it's going to cause a fan base to lose even more faith, and the people at the top then start to get more and more uncomfortable about their jobs. So considering the cards that McDonald was dealt, considering that Schneider knows he's got to figure this thing out, or he's probably going to be the next to go, right? Who do we get rid of first? Would it be McDonald or Schneider if things don't work out over the next couple of seasons? I think Schneider himself has to prove that Pete was the problem between the two of them. How do you do that? By being successful without him. So I think if you take a year and you tank and Pete Carroll looks really good in Vegas, Schneider might be out of job. That wouldn't look good. So you bring in Sam Darnold, you save money, you bring in a third-round pick, you bring in a second-round pick for DK Metcalf, you keep the same amount of production from last year in Cooper Kupp. Yes, he's not the ceiling of DK Metcalf, but has DK reached his ceiling? And no matter who they bring in at quarterback in Pittsburgh, will he reach his ceiling? Let's not forget that Seattle looked so good after that Wilson trade because of how bad Russell looked.
Yep.
Okay? So you're trading DK to a situation where they already have headaches with George Pickens, with attitude problems, with they're waiting on Aaron Rodgers to decide where he wants to play. So Seattle had to make a move where they don't have to put pressure on whatever quarterback they draft this year, because Seattle's going to draft a quarterback. Okay? And wherever they draft them, they don't have a pick towards the top of the draft. So their only way to get a pick towards the top of the draft is to trade a boatload of assets in order to get there, or to tank a season. You can't afford to tank because you're worried about losing your job. You can't trade all your assets because you have to do a full rebuild. So what do? You trade off what you got, get as much as you can for it, and then sign as many budget guys as you can as possible. Get the same quarterback pretty much in Sam Darnold for less. Get Cooper Kupp, who, again, more production on fewer games last year than DK Metcalf, fewer headaches, more emotional ties to Seattle. And you provide yourself an opportunity to stay competitive. Bring in guys from the Rams who you're trying to beat this year. It's the Rams division right now. And so you bring in Cooper Kupp and you re-sign Ernest Jones, who are very familiar with what they got going on. You bring in Clint Kubiak, who's part of that same tree, and you allow yourself time to develop whatever quarterback you do draft this year to figure out if they got what it takes or not, right? They're hoping to draft their Russell Wilson. They're hoping that, imagine this Sam Darnold becomes Matt Flynn, like that is a dream scenario for Seattle. But if not, you get a quarterback who knows the system for Clint Kubiak and can at least buy some time to develop a younger guy.
Do they have to draft a quarterback this year? Could by getting Darnold, doesn't that buy them time to really potentially draft a better option next year if they can get the trenches solidified this year? Before they got Darnold, I was thinking, they got to draft somebody this year. But does it have to be this year? They don't necessarily,
I think
do they?
They need to, because these 3-year deals turn into 2-year deals all the time, right? Guys get cut after that second year. So if you draft a guy next year, you only have 1 year to let him sit behind Darnold. I think you draft a guy now when you have 10 picks in the draft and you just collected all of them by trading your pieces. I do think you draft a guy now, especially in a draft where the top-end talent isn't there, but those late-round picks, if guys fall, Seattle's going to be aggressive and go get them. I'm sure of it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure before we get to the draft, you and I will reconnect again and do a look ahead to what the Seahawks should do now that we've kind of got a pretty good idea of what they've got. 10 picks this draft. The first 5 in the top, it's like the first
100.
Yep. So they're going to definitely have their ability to get some share of talent. It's just a question of how far up do they go. A few more comments on that last trade move. Gridflow says, talking about Kupp, can't get separation anymore. Ranked in the bottom in separation. 700 yards is not worth $15 million. C, he gives it because he's old and injury prone and overpaid. Father Time is undefeated unless you are Tom Brady. Okay. Gridflow also says we're not winning 13 games. We got to tank and rebuild with a real quarterback. Well, that's not happening. If they were going to tank and rebuild with that plan, that would have happened before they signed Sam Darnold. It just ran with the other Sam I Am Howell. That would have been that version. We had that Sam at quarterback. Let's see. Okay, that's mainly the comments. Okay, well, I think we've pretty much covered all the moves. Now, is free season is free agency technically over, or are there still moves that can be made?
Moves can still be made.
Most of the splash moves have been done, right? But yeah, there can be moves done right before the draft, right before they pick. They could be doing some moves too, right? So I guess nothing's ever.
When people get signed into the year, right?
Yeah.
Like it just depends on the player. Aaron Rodgers is still playing. What do you even call that? Just
he's playing drama queen suspension.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right
what
now,
do you think about that? What do you think of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, there was talk about him talk to the Seahawks as a potential. Would you have been excited if he had come here?
I would have tried to see the bright side.
I guess the line would be for what price, right? Everything's great to a price, right? We love everything for
Seattle because of the situation with the head coach and how hands off he is on offense. And then Aaron Rodgers becomes your offensive culture. And then he's gone after a year. Yeah.
No, it would not have been it would have been a circus too. Yeah. In the super chat, Hello FR says, Tomlin never goes under 500, so second is mid to late.
We have the 52nd pick.
Yeah. The second pick that we get from those guys.
Yeah, it's 22nd, or it's 20 picks in.
Right. Well, we shall see. So still things to be determined. We still haven't seen the final numbers on the Cooper Kupp deal. We know it's $45 million for 3 years, just not how much is guaranteed. That's a big part of the equation. And we still haven't seen Geno's final contract either, but we're expecting it's going to be something in the realm of 3 years, $45 million, with that big questionable how much of that is guaranteed up in the air. You saw that Atlanta, they're keeping Kirk Cousins?
Yes. They're crazy.
Boy. Man.
They're crazy. Make up your mind.
Talk about probably was making up their minds like, damn, how much did we spend to get this guy here? $100 million plus. We can't just not play him. But man,
financially, it's hard to let him go. You know, Norm, you know what we should talk about?
What?
What are the Seahawks' remaining needs?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Let's do it. All right, let me take this off of here.
Left, right?
We have 10 picks.
You can pull it up. I made a list.
Oh, what? Okay, I don't have a list prepared, but we can just talk it out, and I'll see what I can put together, maybe.
Can we agree that we need a developmental quarterback?
We're going to need one, yes. We might debate whether we need it this year. I mean, I agree if the guy is there, obviously they have a name in mind. I would hate to spend a bunch to get that quarterback. And then right now, the way the offensive line situation is going, it feels like, okay, we didn't make a big splash in free agency, so it's going to have to be in the draft. Well, if they give up a bunch of resources to get a quarterback and they don't address the line in free agency in the draft, well, then we're just in the same sinking boat again, like a different captain in a boat with holes in it. So I put offensive line ahead of that in terms of priority myself.
Oh, yes.
Super chat Guile G says Seahawks should have been 6-11. Happy to move on from Geno. Yeah, you could say that. There are plenty of games that they could have definitely gone the other way. There's also some games that they could have won. They could have gone the other way too. So depending on you, anytime you have and unless you're blowing people out or getting blown out every year, every game is probably a one-score sway one way or the other. So a team that's, I think like the Chiefs, you know how they finished? What was their record? Like, was it 14-3? It was something crazy, right?
Something ridiculous.
And yet they won by the skin of their teeth on multiple occasions. They could have easily been like practically a barely two-digit win team if they'd lost a bunch of those the games that they probably should have lost. Like winning on a blocked field goal. I mean, when does that happen? Oh yeah, that happened to us. You know what I mean? It's not something you normally count on. So that stat can be pulled away each way. But it's a good point. We were fortunate to be 10-7, but we could have been playoff bound 11-6.
So developmental quarterback we need, doesn't have to be now, but we need. And remember, we have 10 draft picks, so we can kind of match these up.
Right.
Do we agree that we need a tight end?
I was just gonna say, if we got anything out of this draft, I want some kick-ass linemen and a badass tight end. You give me that, like you've just spent all 10 picks and just come out of it with that, maybe a receiver in there too. But I would almost be like, you know what? I'm cool with that because I feel pretty good about everything else. If you can get some like solid, like game-changing guys, I would turn my 10 picks into 3, like 2 offensive linemen and the badass tight end in the draft. I would probably be totally fine with that and go like, you know what? Everything else would have been like, extra players, but these three guys make a difference. So yes, I'm with you. Line and tight end. I was going to say, with you.
So do we think that it's a good idea to also draft another big frame wide receiver. I think we should have a backup plan for MVS and to support him. I think there's a chance MVS becomes that guy, and we can live without it. But I would love for us to draft at some point. It doesn't have to be early, but at some point, I think we need another one.
I agree. The fact that I gave MVS, I gave him a B, right? Actually, I gave him a B minus. I actually changed it mid discussion because I started drinking your Kool-Aid, going, okay, maybe I did underrate him. Because of the fact that I started out as a B minus is telling me already that I would like to make that position a little bit more solid. So I would like to get a guy who's tall, he's got long arms, doesn't have to be built like DK, but it's got speed to take the top off of a defense. I feel like putting all your eggs in one basket with MVS is asking a lot. And again, I want a guy who can do all that and catch the ball. Too.
Well, because who's the backup for that position right now? Jake Bobo, and
or who's the other dude who's like basically just like a special team gunner?
Derek Young or Cody White?
Derek Young, which is not saying much. So we don't really have a backup in that. Jake Bobo,
we need
I
another
guess.
receiver.
Yeah, Jake Bobo is not going to take the top off the D. He's almost like he's kind of almost like a tight end, the way the way I see the way he's built. But he's not going to be the guy to, right? You want that guy who can stretch the field, because between JSN and Cooper Kupp, they're the guys who they're going to do all their damage underneath for the most part, and it's that guy who can take the safety out of the play. We need that speedster. So yes, I'm with you on that one. It's still behind tight end and offensive line.
So we need quarterback, tight end, left guard, right guard. Yeah.
What about center? Are we set at center?
I think we get a guy who can move between center and right guard. I think we need a left guard for sure, and then we need a guy who can do center or right guard. And I think we go Olu over Bradford. And so then we end up playing the guy more at right guard. I would be happy for us to bring in 3 brand new interior linemen. That'd be great.
It would be a shame if Christian Haynes, who we drafted, it was our second pick, wasn't he?
He was a fourth round pick.
Fourth round pick, but I know. I just felt so good about him getting him. And then I was like, man, where is he? I felt the same way of Byron Murphy at times. Where's he at? Where's our shiny new toy at? Why is he on the sideline? Anyway, but yes, guard, tackle, guard, or not tackle, guard, or guard center, something of that nature.
We need a nose tackle. We need, I'd say we need another interior linebacker to go with Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones. And then we need another corner. We lost Trey Brown. We have Witherspoon plays in the slot, and we have Woolen outside. And then you look opposite him, and you got Nehemiah Pritchett listed as a starter on ESPN right now. You know, our left guard position is so bad on ESPN, they don't even list the position for the Seahawks depth chart.
That's terrible.
Like, there's 10 guys on offense, or however many with all the extra positions that they count for, but it's ridiculous.
Well, part of that too is because Tomlinson left. He was technically the left guard. Yeah. So with him gone, they haven't really officially filled that position. I don't think it's that we suck so bad they don't even count it. I've never seen that.
I
mean, he just left. He was just let go. So, they haven't officially said blah, blah, blah is going to be our left guard. I mean, it sucks. Again, this is the state of the fact that we don't even know who it is. You don't even know who your left guard is officially. It might be Haynes. It could be, or somebody we haven't picked up yet. And that's probably why they're leaving that open.
That's who it's going to be.
Who?
Or what's the guy's name from the Bears? Am I saying it? Is Tevin Coleman? Isn't that his name? Tevin Jenkins? Is that it? I think it's Tevin Jenkins. Yep, Tevin Jenkins. That's who we're bringing in. So, we're hosting a Monday, right?
Right. Yes, I heard about that.
This is going to be our guy right here. This is who Seattle needs to go get. Let me pull up.
This will be the big splash offensive line free agent signing we've been dying for.
Yes. Now let's look. Can I? Right now, I'm looking at PFF. Okay, Pro Football Focus, and they have him graded last year as a 75.5 76.4 overall, 75.8 pass game, 74.3 run game. And it's really hard to get those stats on PFF. Not a lot of guys do. He's listed as playing 738 snaps, which is 55th in the NFL. 4 penalties and 4 sacks allowed. That's a lot of snaps, and he's still graded really well. He would be a great addition to this offensive line, and he's the guy who I would love. If we could just bring him in, that'd be such a huge move. Then we can really pound out center and right guard in the draft.
This is the Bears, you said, right?
Yes.
Are you sure he played for that same team? That's really like the one good player on that line because, man, the Bears just sort of fell apart late down the stretch. Where was he in the mix of? I'm just looking at the whole thing because, man, when Seattle played the Bears, man, didn't they sack Caleb Williams like 6 times or something? I was in the Philippines, so I couldn't even watch that game, but I watched some highlights and replays, and I was like, man, we are getting to that quarterback a lot.
The Bears are overhauling their entire offensive line. So let's be clear. I didn't sit there and watch Tevin Jenks every snap in 2024. I'm
just asking because I didn't either. So I don't really know. I'm just going to the
he's
totality.
grading out well, and this would mark a change in the Schneider mentality. When has he ever paid an interior offensive lineman big money in free agency to come join the Seahawks? If
Not
they
in
were
recent
to
years.
Go bring this guy in, especially after Mekhi Becton now off the market.
Yes.
I think it would say something about the mentality of this team.
John, I mean, the fact that they're bringing him in, that's positive. I saw a quote from John Schneider saying something like, "Yeah, we all want to," paraphrasing, yes, we're looking for offensive linemen, but just because we didn't get, is it Freeze or Fries? I've heard it both ways. The one who went to Will Fries, spelled like fries, like French fries, but I don't really know what it is. We'll say Fries, right? Like they were targeting him, and they were going to bring him in. They wanted to do a physical, but the Vikings swooped him up without even doing that. They were just like, okay, we don't care if you broke your leg, we want you. So they missed out on that. But then he answered that by saying, well, just because we didn't get the guy we wanted doesn't mean we should just go overpay for whoever's next available, even if they're not that good, just because we want to be able to tell everybody we got somebody. So while I appreciate that thinking, it's also the thing that he's done so many years and what has resulted in us not having a decent offensive lineman. So it's a little bit of both, you know what I'm saying? So this is promising. Hopefully this works out. I mean, that would definitely put a lot of Seahawks minds to ease, knowing that, okay, we don't have to completely build the offensive line from the draft and have a bunch of rookies protecting our quarterback from in the middle of the field, or middle of the line. So, okay, where were we going now? So we got corner and then
nose tackle, interior linebacker, right guard, left guard. We got to get that fullback / tight end.
Yes.
Need a fullback for this new system now.
I know. One of the few teams that will have one. Juszczyk is
re-signed.
Oh, did he re-sign with the Niners? He did go
re-sign with the Niners.
Oh, dang! I thought he was on the market.
Yeah, he would have been nice.
Oh, okay. Well, they're probably smart to keep him.
Yep.
So is that it? Kickers were fine. Long snapper, I think that's a big need right there. Just kidding. We're fine there. Safety, I think we're good at safety, right? Safety's rocking. Corner, you mentioned Nehemiah Pritchett.
Yeah, I think Seahawks are kind of square outside of that. So if we count them, developmental quarterback, tight end, big wide receiver, fullback / tight end, left guard, right guard, nose tackle, interior linebacker, cornerback. That's 9 + 1, maybe a center.
Did you add Did you add the fast receiver? Was that?
I did I said big receiver, but
you did.
Two
okay, all right.
True.
Okay, all right.
That's 10. That's 10 draft picks. Now let's look back at this afterwards and calculate how many positions we nailed.
Yeah, and that's assuming we don't drop back and get more picks. That's assuming we don't move forward and try to bundle some picks to move up in the draft too.
Yep.
But technically, there will be somebody at every position to fill those needs. The question is, how good will those players be at that point in time that we draft them? Like I said, I don't want to have another season where it feels like we drafted 10 guys, and then like 4 years later, they're all gone. nobody's playing anymore for the team. I mean, that's not a good draft. If that is bad drafting, if that's the way it turns out, and I think that's what happened, right, with like the 2019 class. I think everybody from that team, and
at the very least,
is gone, and maybe even more. The year that we drafted, what's his name, D. Eskridge.
Yeah.
What year was that?
That was the year we had, 3 picks? Wait, D. Eskridge, Stone Forsythe. Who was the third? It was in the middle. Oh, I can't remember.
I don't know. Anyway, with Stone Forsythe going, I think that was like the last of them. That was the last of us. The last of us.
That was a very weak draft class anyways. And I think at this point, if in a few years we don't have any of our current draft picks from this year, I think it would more be a sign that we sold ownership and or got rid of Schneider. And that would be most likely what caused it, rather than a bunch of missed picks. Hopefully I don't have to eat my words on that one, because it hurt if we blew 10 picks this year.
Oh God, yeah, no, this is like a nice wealth of picks here to play with. It's all scarier. It's almost more nerve-wracking when you have a lot of picks, or what's even worse is when you have a really high draft first-round pick. It's like, oh my God. You can either hit a home run or completely blow it here. The pressure to get that first pick is so high when you're drafting 10 or higher, because it's like, you can get anybody you want. You can get the best player at any position if you're drafting, less than 10, right? You can get a quarterback, you can get a receiver, you can get a running back, you can get a lineman, you can get a pass rusher. It's like, but which one and which do you choose? And if you choose wrong, you're going to be that team that, you could have had Patrick Mahomes, You passed on Patrick Mahomes, and you're like, oh, son of a...
You just traded the Chiefs, Xavier Worthy. Yep.
Yeah. Comments, you guys are staying strong, man. You guys have been sticking with us. I appreciate considering that we're just like kind of spitballing here. But Jordan Williams says Jaden Higgins, round 2 would be nice. He's 6'4" and fast.
Yep.
Honestly, I'm a little worried about Abe Lucas. We need him healthy. This is the first time Lucas is, I think, ending the season healthy and going into the season, I assume, relatively healthy. So this is maybe a good start. Last year, obviously, he was unavailable for the first, 4 or 5, 6 games. True. So I think Haynes will actually play in Kubiak's offense and be decent. Timothy Israel, truly it won't hurt to take a quarterback with potential in the 3rd round, i.e. that's Russell Wilson flashbacks there. Gridflow, we are not getting a good O-line instantly through the draft. We needed to make free agent signings. Well, if we get the one that you're talking about from the Bears on Monday, maybe that will be the answer to that. T-Money Israel, we will get another guard by the end of the trade deadline because that's how John works. True. So does Tevin Jenkins actually really move the needle at all, though? He has never played a full season in his career. I'm not against it, but I don't view him as an answer to the O-line question.
Well, he's not an answer by himself. He's a piece to the system, right? I think going into it with as many holes as we have right now and heading into the draft like that might make us desperate, might make us have to reach for guys, draft them earlier than they probably should go because we need it so badly. And I think that's what we want to avoid going into the draft, is having such big needs that we have to address those needs rather than taking the best player available.
Wasn't the highest offensive lineman drafted last year? Wasn't it Joe Alt? Didn't the Colts take him?
He was a year before last.
Oh, okay. I remember that name stood out as a high draft offensive lineman.
No, because he was. No, you're right. Because he was Harbaugh, and Harbaugh's first year was the same as McDonald. You're right.
How did he do?
He was the 5th overall pick.
I'm just curious. How did he do? Can you anyone look that up? I know alignment. It's not like you can't look up touchdowns. And I'm just curious how for a team that they drafted him. Where was he drafted? 1st round, 5th pick of the draft last year. So I was right. It was the Chargers got him. I'm just curious. Right. That's as high as I remember an offensive lineman going. Was it worth it? Do Chargers fans feel like, I'm sure glad we drafted a lineman in the 5th with the 5th pick? That sure paid off.
So
I don't know.
For what it's worth, remember Tevin Jenkins was a 74 according to PFF. Joe Walt 77.6. Okay. So his pass blocking grade is better, 79, but his run blocking grade is lower, 71.6.
Tasha J says, the Chargers took Joe Alt. Eric Astad, he was pretty solid. Howard M says really good. Grid Flow, Chargers do not regret Joe Alt.
Oh, by no means do they. Yeah.
So played 16 games. So one game he didn't play for whatever reason. But anyway, so all right. So case in point, no buyer's remorse for drafting high for an offensive lineman, even though John Schneider doesn't believe in it.
Yep.
But he's going to have to start believing in it one way, either getting it through the free agency or drafting higher. No, man. It's like, oh, it's going to be fun, right? It's like you got so much to juggle. You got to pay attention to your cap. You got to pay attention to the money you actually have to spend. You got to pay attention to your draft capital. You can't disregard your other needs, and you can't have one without the other, right? You have the best quarterback in the world, but if your line sucks, doesn't matter who's back there. They got to get that line figured out, because that rookie quarterback we drafted, we don't have a line to protect that guy. He's gonna get killed. I keep saying so. Yeah.
You got to consider who's available, who else could take them off the market, when that could happen, how much time you have.
Mm-hmm. Oh, people wants to know, can you answer my question? Do you trust Sam Darnold to win you a playoff game?
No.
Well, that was quick.
That's an easy question, right? We just saw it. We shouldn't trust him right now. Okay, there's no he's got to prove it. Okay, but
you gave it an A. You gave the move an A
because situationally, right? Well, and wait, was Sam Darnold an A, or was he? I gave him a B plus. Thank you.
You gave A's to Cooper Kupp,
MVS, and
MVS. That's right, MVS. Okay, it's B plus. Okay, sorry, my bad.
I gave an A to law enforcement. Okay. Demarcus Lawrence. Look, Sam Darnold, I think it was really good situationally. Again, we're saving money. We're still competitive. He's coming off his best year yet. If there was ever a year to pay him, it's now. And he buys us time to develop our next quarterback. In terms of winning us a Super Bowl, I don't know who we could have got right now other than finding a way to trade for Joe Burrow. That would have allowed us a better opportunity to compete for a Super Bowl right now, based on the situation that we have. And it's for that reason that I like it a lot, because considering we had Geno Smith, who wanted more money than we were willing to pay him, thank goodness we did not. Let's move forward with the best available option, especially for this system, to establish an offensive coordinator, to establish an identity, and to have to worry less about communication because he's already familiar with some of the language. That's why Sam Darnold is a good move.
What sucks about this, though, is that, a lot of the noise around Geno was people would say, well, Geno can do this and do that, but we know he's not the guy to take us to the Super Bowl. He's never going to lead us to the promised land. And your initial reaction, do you trust Sam Darnold to win a playoff game? You without hesitation, nope. I was like, that came a little too quick, man. You're supposed to ponder for at least, make me think. You're like, I probably gotta say no at this point. I mean, you're like,
just because we signed him doesn't mean we gotta have revisionist history, man. He ended that season looking bad, and full transparency, heading into the offseason, I was sitting there like, man, some sucker team's gonna pay him.
That's what I thought as soon as that game was over. And I had to kind of like have a little temporary amnesia of that game to let myself feel bad about this move, because that was a very bad game. He had two games, really. It was that game and the Lions game, too. So, I mean, it was two bad games. But that doesn't mean that's him moving forward, right? I mean, it's... Nope. You got to look at all things, and he was not very well protected. Which it had that look of a Geno type game with a lot of sacks and hold on to the ball too long. But yeah, well, let's just hope we don't see that type of game when we play the Rams again. Let's just hope we don't see that kind of history repeating itself for sure. We'll see. There's so many things changing. That's the thing. There's so many things changing this year with this. If we have a running game, everything we remember the last couple of years is just a Seahawks team that cannot run the football, which is weird to say because Seattle has always been a team that run first has been their identity for such a long time. But, you just get even an average, because we were probably like a bottom, like worst offensive line and a below average running game. You get like just, I'm even asking, we're not looking for, the best run game, in the NFC. The Eagles have that. I just want to be like average and slightly above average, because that would look radically different from what we've seen in the last couple of years. Yeah, just be all right, you know? I mean, we can do that. Suddenly, it's going to feel like we're 10 times better because of how bad it has been. But, you know, not asking for much, just moving the needle just a little bit. It doesn't have to swing the pendulum the entire way, just a little nudge this direction. So, let's see. Dismal E says, you gave MVS an A? LOL. T-Money Israel, have faith if we make it. And if we win our division with a home game, it can happen. Gripflow says 49ers trade Jordan Mason to the Vikings.
Yeah, that did just go through, and it looked like the Vikings already signed him.
Oh, this happened just now while we were talking? Yeah. Oh, interesting. Breaking news. Jordan Mason leaves the Niners, goes to the Vikings. Yeah, okay. Well, all right. Well, that's enough to look back on and you know, months from now and look at how we rated things and how it's going to turn out. I'll definitely have to do some screenshots of some of these things and play them back and see how right or wrong we were. But hopefully we're not too off. There's definitely a reason to be optimistic. So
Norb, I don't think they were just asking me the question, how confident are you that Sam could win a playoff game? I didn't hear you answer the question.
It's because you were so quick to answer yours that I was in shock in the reaction to it. All right, I'm going to kind of chicken out here with like a politician's answer, which is, how can I even answer a playoff game when I haven't even seen him in the Seahawks system in a regular season game? But
what is this, Noah? One Senate hearing.
Yeah, Mr. Congressman. No, I mean, I'm just right now trying to get faith that he's going to be able to win more regular games than losing them. Less in a playoff game, right? Because we haven't seen anything with this combination. As far as his ability, yeah, it's hard to not just look at the most recent, you know, events and go, yeah, it kind of sucked, right? But that doesn't mean it's just, if you play that game 20 times over and over again, that it would be the same result every single time, right? It was just that game was just, it was a bad day. Maybe we just had a bad day. And maybe the Rams just did some exceptional things, especially at the line of scrimmage. But, you know, I don't always think that these games would turn out the same way. Like, you could play the Seahawks and the Rams or the 49ers, and if they rematched them in a best of 4 out of 7 game series, you know, it could go a different way, or maybe, you know, it goes the opposite way because we're not really seeing what happened. But that's football, right? You just get that one day that everything came together for you, and that's all that matters. But I guess what I can look at is that body of work from last year. He did something right, because you can't win 14 games without being pretty decent. System or no system, weapons around him. He was able to do that himself. And he did it with stats to back up what he did. So the fact that he has that, he did that, something that Geno was never ever able to do. Heck, the Seahawks, it's been, I don't know, last time they had a record that high. I don't think we've ever been more than 14 wins in a regular season. I think 13 was our high when we won the Super Bowl, 13-3, back when it was only 16 games. And
they lost the last one. They were 14-2.
Right. So, yeah. But, you know, it's hard to go undefeated. It's hard to win every single one. You're going to lose ones that you shouldn't lose, and you're going to win some that you didn't think you're going to win. But anyway, so I guess if I take the politician out of me, how confident am I in Sam Darnold? I would probably say I'm more confident in him than I was in Geno Smith. So I guess I'm a little bit more confident.
Ooh.
Because Geno never did it here either. I mean, we only went to one because we didn't make the playoffs the last 2 years, and we got beaten pretty badly against the 49ers the one year he did take us there. And Geno's been, you know, he hasn't been able to take us over that hump. We haven't won a playoff game in forever. So I guess the fact that I can't hold that against him one game, he's only had one game that he didn't bring it together, but he had a heck of a lot of other wins. I'm going to say I'm a little more optimistic that he could with all these pieces being in there, that I'm more confident that he can win a playoff game than we would have been in recent years, since Russell Wilson left. How's that for an answer, huh? So I guess you said no. I guess I'm saying yes. If I have to be black and white, like an attorney would be.
More than Geno. That's the takeaway. What'd you grade it?
I gave him an A-.
Okay, yep.
I gave Darnold an A-.
It tracks.
So, all right. So I can't give him an A- and say I don't believe in him.
Yeah. All right.
And I would not have liked the move if I didn't think he could win us a playoff game. I would have been like, oh, this sucks. He can't win a playoff game. What did they do that for? Like I said, the longer I looked at it, the better it felt as a trade move, given what we had as an option. So that being said, with everything coming together and the pieces that are coming our way and the pieces yet to be grabbed, I think I'm more confident than in any of the last 3 years that Sam Darnold can win us a playoff game. This is a season meant to win a playoff game. We're not doing this to tank. We're not doing this to rebuild. We're going out there to win. So I wouldn't be excited if I thought, they're trying, but it ain't happening, So, I'm, for the record, yes, I'm confident that Sam Darnold can win us a playoff game. There we go. There. Now you can take that quote. Just take everything else I said aside. Just put that right there, that little snippet, and then you can hold me to it. So we don't make it, I say, no, you say we win a playoff game. You don't even know what you're talking about. You suck.
Wow.
But we all have our opinions.
Well, when he has his MVP season and when the Seahawks go undefeated and win the Super Bowl, then you're going to look pretty smart. Nope.
Yeah, that's right. They're going to come back and say, Norb knew back on March 15th. What was up? And Noah didn't, because he said no in like less than half a second when he was asked that question. Are you confident that no? He didn't even finish asking the question.
He's got to prove it, man. I saw the question in chat, and instantly I'm just like, no. We got to be honest here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's too early to be that honest because we just don't know. We just don't know what we got here. But it's going to be better than it was. I'm confident in that. We will be better than what we've been in the last 2 years, which is not a playoff team. This time we will be a playoff team.
Boom.
And a team that will win in the playoffs. Not just get there, but win.
We collectively, we should feel better about our situation now than we did a few weeks ago. At the very least, we are intrigued, the Seahawks fans, about the season.
For sure. For sure. And it's always the promise, the hope of the potential of players becoming something a bit of what they once were, or players reaching greatness that they've not yet achieved since they will be stepping onto this field for the first time. So it's gonna be a lot of fun for sure. All right, well, I think for that, I'm about ready to wrap this thing up. Again, my special thanks to Mr. Noah Boelter, morning reporter in Spokane. Is there anything? I know I've had your social media handle there the whole time, so they know where to find you. Is there anything you want to talk about, promote coming up? Anything that you want viewers to know about you before we sign off?
I appreciate it. I put a video out a week ago, right as the Geno news was coming out, and I was just talking about how Seattle's in a full rebuild and why this is a good thing, and that was before Sam Darnold signed, right? So as things continue to happen, I'll put out more videos. So, subscribe. We appreciate it. Show Norb some love. That's really what it's about, though.
Well, I appreciate you, but yes, I was with you with the same thing. I had a rebuild thumbnail created before I was about to go to the video, and then the Sam Darnold thing came down. I was like, oh no, never mind.
Yeah,
change the title entirely.
Well, and for the people at home, can we just take them behind the curtains a little bit, because I don't know how much people realize the amount of work that you put into this. Like, we were on the call for hours.
Typing away in silence. Yes.
I'm preparing notes to the show. He's over there setting up the graphics and editing and doing this and that. Meanwhile, we're doing everything we can, trying not to. We're like a couple who argues in public and is trying not to. We're like sitting there, like avoiding the topic like the plague.
When I could hear you go, oh, I know your wheels are turning, but you're not going to say anything. It reminded me of that time. Remember when we were doing a live stream reaction to I think it was the Charger game, and you were, because of my stupid Comcast, which I canceled, by the way. I cut the cord just a few days ago just to save money, just because Comcast was pissing me off. So I cut to save us our business $400 a month. Anyway, do you remember we were watching the game and you were a good 30 seconds ahead of me, and it was the play where Ken Walker got that touchdown, 80 yards or something, and he's splitting down the sideline, and then I think it's the play where they took a still and there's a woman flipping him off from the suite at the end. Anyway, that iconic photo was taken from that play, and you were ahead of me, and you were I watched it later because it was hilarious, because you're you're trying to contain because you knew that if you said something, I'd be spoiled to know what was happening if you're all of a sudden celebrating. But you did a good job keeping your cool, because it's so funny to look at it now. Because you just so badly want to scream and jump for joy, and you have to contain your excitement. That was damn hilarious to watch. Looking back,
it's the greater good of the stream and of the team, man. We got to take care of the team.
Yeah, but sometimes it's hard, man. When your emotions get you, you just can't help but react. And you did a pretty good job containing that, given that at the moment that was a huge play. That was a gigantic play at that time.
Hey, man, go Hawks, man. Go Hawks.
Yeah, man.
You give me goosebumps, man. Give me goosebumps. I want to put a helmet on.
Oh, man. Well, the other thing we were planning doing this is normally I would do this on StreamYard. StreamYard's kind of been the platform of choice. But if you've noticed, you've probably seen some of my later videos that I've done on StreamYard, and for whatever reason, the quality has turned to just absolute garbage. It's all blurry and choppy. The audio's there, but it's just and I have no control over that. It's just like a flip of the coin. One day it looks great, another day it just looks like ass. And I can't tell, because from my view, it looks beautiful. And then people have to tell me, Norb, you look so what's wrong with your camera? I was I don't know. I didn't do anything different. But it's just like a crapshoot. Because I was on with Steezy the other day, and it looked great to me. He never said anything. I watched it later. I was oh my God, I look horrible. This is terrible, with bad representation on Steezy's show. I don't like to do that. It's it's a disservice to him and to myself. And so I was I'm not going to let that happen when we do this very important free agency breakdown with you. I'm not going to have my camera again look like crap. So we were spending a bunch of time trying to figure out how to do this. And I'm very happy with actually doing it. We're doing it through Google Meet. For one thing, it's free. Secondly, there's no time limit. And since we yammer on for hours, going on, we're almost on 2 hours now. 2 hours. 2 hours. We're logging the feature film again. Needed to have that thing, and the quality, from what I can tell, it's been holding up, and it actually gives me better audio control and everything like that. So more information than you need to know, but it took a lot of research to figure out how to circumvent this StreamYard issue that I was having, because I wanted this show featuring Noah, since we don't do this very often, to be as good as possible. So I feel very good about what we were able to do here. So.
But you should be proud. And this is what I was talking about, the behind the scenes. People have no idea. People have no idea how much Noah puts into all this behind the scenes. It's incredible to watch. He's the one who taught me how to set up YouTube and OBS and streaming and cameras. And you taught me so much about this. And I gained just so little. And I'm still have been able to just learn so much off that tiny little portion of what you do. So,
well, I appreciate that, but I've seen you in your behind the scenes of your news stuff, where you're like a one-man band, doing the mic, doing the camera, doing all that. So I know you've had to learn how to multitask and do things, not always by yourself, but you've had to do things on your own, right? But isn't that part of being a reporter? A lot of times you are self-producing your own material, and you're like a one-man band at times.
Every so often, but for the most part, I'm thankful to have an awesome teammate with me on most days.
And now you got a crew now. Okay, all right. I think for a while there were some times when I saw you kind of like just you and the camera, but see, you're moving up in the world. You don't need to do this all yourself, because you get higher in the ladder. You have people to do this stuff for you, so you don't have to do everything, which is great, man. So. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining up here and watching for the last 2 hours. You could have been doing something else for 2 hours, and instead you decided to listen to us fools talk for a while. But I learned a lot. I always do whenever I talk to Noah. I'm sure that you guys might have picked up on a few things. I learned a lot from you guys, just the input that you guys give us to kind of digest and think about things, because, we all have our opinions and thoughts, and in the end, it's going to be whatever the team makes it to be. We'll look at the end of the day and decide whether we were right or wrong, and hopefully they will prove us right, at least for the things that we felt pretty positive about. So the football offseason continues. I guess we might have a few more free agent news maybe next week to talk about an offensive lineman if things go well with, what's his name? What's the guy's name again? Jenkins. So we'll see if that amounts to anything. But after that, it's going to be all draft stuff, man. So maybe you and I can do something mid-April in preparation before the draft hits.
Well, here's hoping, Norb. You got my number.
All right. Well, that if it's just that, you will be hearing from me, man.
Cool.
All right. Well, that's it. Thanks again for watching, guys. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe, check out Noah's content as well at his social feeds there. What platforms are you on? You're on Instagram. Are you doing
Instagram for the most part? I do YouTube, TikTok, all that stuff. So yeah, but Instagram, Facebook, Noah Boelter TV.
All right. And if you're around Spokane, you probably already know who this guy is because you've been seeing him on the news over there. But pretty soon it's going to be somewhere maybe bigger at some point. But, always moving up. So, all right. Well, that's it for now. We will talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Yo, I'm Cam Walker, running back for the Seattle Seahawks.
Tyler Lockett from the Seattle Seahawks.
DK Metcalf.
KJ Wright. Hey, Burleson. You're watching Norcam.
You're watching Norcam.